Oh, there's so many wonderful people here today. I'm excited. Today, I am Minh. I am a student of Tai Zi from the Budding Dharma Temple in Arlington, Texas, and I'm studying to be a nun. I am teaching today the Four Noble Truths. Now, we are having, hello, Reverend Valerie. We are offering these Buddhist basics classes, and it's a series of 4 classes. And we have one every Saturday, every month, and then we start over. So we're starting at the top again, and we're going to do this for a few months. And then in April, there's an opportunity, if you have taken these 4 classes and also virtually met and talked with a teacher for about the process and how your thoughts are about this, you can take refuge. You're eligible to take refuge in April if you want. And so this is one of those required classes. Now, I was thinking, we've been talking about this so much that I want people to feel like taking refuge is not a requirement of being part of the Sangha. You know, it's a really neat opportunity that's being offered that isn't offered publicly like this very often. But you don't have to do that. You can be part of the Sangha, you can come to the classes, you could do all those things and never take refuge and never go any further with it, and just enjoy being part of the community and practicing the path. So I just wanted to make sure nobody feels like they're pressured, like they're saying, everybody's turning into a reverend or a nun or a monk. Should I do that too? If you're called to do it, for sure, talk to one of the teachers. But otherwise, just enjoy these classes. Now, these classes, because they're repeating, they're taught by 4 different students. And so we rotate. And so it just so happens, you might remember me from last week, I taught the last in the series, the Taking Refuge. So it just happened with the way the schedule worked out that I'm now at the top and it's the very next week. So you get me again. Oh my gosh. So today we're going to talk about the Four Noble Truths. Now, Buddha said that the Four Noble Truths were the truth, that there was only 4 truths in this world, and that was these 4 noble truths. And we've heard them, and we know them, and we know that, you know, there is suffering, there's a cause to suffering, there's an end to suffering, and it's the Eightfold Path is the way to path out of suffering. The end, the shortest class ever on record. But what I want to do is like, how do we really understand that? How does that apply to me? And what does it really mean? Because I can read it in a billion books. We talk about it all the time here. But how is it applicable and what does it mean to me? And I think in order to understand what it really means, we have to understand as a human being where the Buddha was when he realized this. Thank you, Scott. Reverend Scott just put the Four Noble Truths in the chat. And believe me, we will go into them a lot more deeper than I just did. But the nice thing about teaching this class after taking refuge class is that where I left off with the story, where we left off, and our hero, the Buffalo Water Boy, Savasti, had met the man who was going to be the Buddha, who right now is just Siddhartha Gautama, and hadn't had his enlightenment yet. That's kind of where we are now. We left them with him saying, I still need to figure some things out. I've regained my health thanks to this young girl who helped me get back to health, Sujata. And so I feel like there's something there that I need to figure out. And this is right before he realizes that he has his enlightenment. Speaking of Sujata, I want to just add a little something here. I'm going to be sprinkling in some words from women, from female nuns, from Buddhist nuns, from some of the very first followers of the Buddha who were female, because I feel that we don't hear a lot of the women's voices from this time. You know, it feels like it's all men. And that's great. There was a lot of men, and Buddha was a man, and he related to men, and he was very radical and very, very open-minded. Nobody was touching untouchables. He touched an untouchable. He eventually ordained an untouchable. Nobody was talking to women. He was talking to women. And in some ways, then women were treated worse than untouchables in that they had absolutely no free will. They were bought and sold, whether it was in marriage for dowry or on the streets as a prostitute. They didn't really have a lot of opportunities either. But so some of them, for a woman to shave her head and put on a robe and follow what the Buddha was saying was really, really radical. But to them, and in their words, they often use the term free. It made them free. So they weren't leaving a life of luxury where they had everything and could enjoy it and I just don't feel good and I want to find out what the truth is. They were actually escaping often. So I have a book here that Venerable Jeff turned me on to, The First Free Women, Poems of the Early Buddhist Nuns. I got it off Amazon. And this is the Therigatha. The Therigatha is a collection of poems from the first that have survived. Not a lot has survived of what the women were going through at that time, but these are them. And they're often the women who wrote the poems are only known by one name. Maybe it was their Dharma name or maybe their first name. But there's some very interesting comments here that I think are going to help us understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'll be pulling from this in a few times. So we left Siddhartha. He was in the forest. He was now feeling healthier, and he was sitting under trees and meditating. Sujata, the girl, was bringing him food, and he was also venturing into the village and begging for food at this time. He was getting out there. But the only people who were really listening to what he had to say were the children, and the children were starting to gather. Now, Siddhartha had arrived at these trees with some friends. He had some ascetic friends who had been with him in the mountains and when they practiced a lot of self-denial and removal from the world and really harsh living conditions with no adequate food, shelter, and water. And he had arrived there with friends, but they had drifted off because they're like, what's this guy doing? He's eating, for one thing. He's drinking, he's enjoying food, he's laughing, he's talking to a girl and a water buffalo boy. We're out of here. So his friends left. And he realizes that, wow, everybody's gone. So he's starting to venture out into the village. He's starting to talk to people again. And something is rattling around in his brain. And so as we've heard here in Sangha, what he does is he meditates. He walks, he sits, he's letting it work, letting it percolate. And I have a poem here that I wanted to read to you that is kind of where I think he and where all of us have sort of felt at some time. And this is by a woman who's just known as Sangha, and that means community. They often took names, Dharma names, and she was just known as Sangha. And she says, when I left the only home I'd ever known, I thought I'd left everything behind. But I was still carrying all the years of running back and forth and around in circles after this and that. Just sitting still, those circles have broken apart and been carried away by this simple wind blowing in and out. So that's kind of where Siddhartha was. He was just sitting and letting the wind come in and out and noticing. And one of the first things he notices is his body. And so he meditates on his body and he notices that it's healing. And he also notices that his body, when it's feeling better, his mind is calmer. And when the body's agitated, the mind's agitated. And the other way around. He doesn't feel good in his body when his mind's agitated. And he's noticing the connection between mind and body. And that these things are connected and they're one. And then as he heals more and his mind and his body are healing more from his traumatic ordeals, he is noticing out of his mind, out of his body, he's seeing a stone, he's seeing a leaf, he's seeing a bird, and he's finding a myriad of things to meditate on. And at one point, and this is from Old Path, White Clouds, which I quote a lot, Thich Nhat Hanh, says that it's like he notices dust. And everything dust is composed of everything around us that dries up, that gets brittle, that falls off of us. Dust is us. Dust is the universe. Dust is everything. And if there was nothing here, if there was no universe, there wouldn't be dust. There'd be nothing to decay and become dust. But if there were no dust anywhere, that would mean there was nothing decaying and falling into dust. So that would mean there was no universe. So if you wanted to see the entire universe, all you had to do was look at a speck of dust. It's all in there. And he started having this realization that we're all interconnected. And he's getting excited and he's teaching this to the students. He's like, and he's giving these beautiful lectures. If you have Old Path White Clouds, he has the tangerine teaching. He has some really beautiful teachings. And I really recommend reading that, where he's realizing that from a societal, from a social perspective, he knew that we weren't separate. That's why when he was living in the palace, married with his child, his wife, and he would go out and try to help sick kids and work with the poor people, things that people of his caste never did. He did not pay attention to caste levels. Everybody was equal, but that was more of a political, social view. Now he's really feeling it. It's like, yes, you and I are exactly the same. There's no difference between us. I see me and you and me. And so he's having these revelations and he's talking to the children about this. And this is where that leads into the interdependency, where he's seeing how, well, this piece of dust can't exist without the universe, or this leaf can't exist without the whole tree, and the tree can't exist without the roots and the soil system, and the soil can't exist. And he's seeing how everything leads to something else. And in him, this is all leading to something else as well. And he's getting really excited about this. I have a poem that I didn't know when to give to you, but I really want, it's words from Sujata herself. When she notices that this change in the Buddha, that he is something has happened to him. And in this poem, it could be taken that she was later down the road and she ran into him after she was already a nun, because she became a nun as well. Or it could be right when Buddha was experiencing enlightenment. You can take it either way. But this poem from Sujata says, "The day began just like any other. We dressed, ate breakfast, and went to the park. As we were passing," see, the kids came all the time out to the forest to see him. "As we were passing the Anjana woods, I remember someone saying, 'Let's go see the monastery.' We pushed open the door and there he was. How did I know? It was the eyes. I sat down and the Buddha taught me the Dharma. You there, be ready. Does today feel like any other day?" So for them, it was like, this was just a normal day. And boom, I meet this enlightened man. And I think from the stories that we hear and the tales that have been told, and these things that occurred were 2,500 years ago, but it did happen fairly quickly. Now, sometimes we hear the Buddha sat down for 3 days and he came up with, and boom, boom, boom. One night he realized the first noble truth, and then the second noble truth, and the third, which led to the fourth, and it happened very quickly. But yes, but there was this period of time that he was building up to this, that he was recognizing that we all share the same experience because we are the same experience. And he was really starting to crack open. So when the Four Noble Truths happened, when his enlightenment happened, he was under a tree, which he had an affinity for trees. He sat under trees ever since he was a child. And it came to him. And the first noble truth that came to him was that, let me see if I want to do something first. Yes, the first noble truth that came to him was that there is suffering. And we hear that and we say, duh. But, and then the other way we take it here in the Western world, and this is one of the biggest challenges I have found in describing Buddhism to people, is they're like, oh, Buddhism, that's that really sad religion where you guys all suffer. Or the other thing I've heard is that, oh, I don't relate to that teaching because I don't suffer. Starving children in Africa are suffering. Villages with no fresh water are suffering. War refugees are suffering. I don't suffer. I have a house. I have adequate food. I have my dog, he might say he's suffering. He might disagree right now, but it's, so we, especially in Western times and now, don't relate to the word suffering. And I think suffering is a good translation of the word. The word is dukkha. And I think suffering is a good, but I think that in modern day Western times, we have a different idea of what suffering is. And suffering, so maybe I'm an interpreter, I'm a sign language interpreter. And when there's a word that I don't have a direct translation for, we do a thing what's called expansion. So if there's an English word that pops up and there's no direct ASL correlation, we will percolate the meaning of the word in our head and then give several signs to try to describe the meaning, and vice versa. There's words in ASL that don't translate in English, so we do the same, we expand it. And I think that's something that would be helpful here. So the word suffering, you can think of it as an uncomfortableness or anger or despair or grief, anxiety, depression, anything that's rocks you toward the negative side of your equilibrium. And we do lots of things for that because many of us have been taught that that's not okay to feel those things. So here in the Western world, we hide that we're depressed or that we're anxious. We react angrily when we're angry. We're told to buck up when we're sad. Men don't cry, women cry too much. We have all these teachings and all these stories that get told to us around suffering. So we internalize it a lot, and a lot of that turns into self-hate. I heard so many check-ins today where people wanted to forgive themselves, and which is absolutely essential, but interesting that that's something that we feel so often, is that our suffering has become very internal and a very personal and private thing. So this is what the Buddha is saying. He is validating you. You are being validated by an enlightened man that there is suffering, and the angst that you're feeling is real. It's not something to hide and to put away. So this is a big deal. And to recognize that this exists in the world, that yes, you've been treated badly by someone or something has happened to you and you hurt. That's the validation of this. He continued to sit, and it's said that he didn't get all these understandings in one night. And he said that Kosin just texted me something. Oh, I like that. Dissatisfaction. He just texted me the word dissatisfaction. I love that. Yeah, just an icky. You feel icky sometimes. He sat there for another night or two, who knows, and he came and he realized that there's a cause to this suffering. There's a reason that you're suffering. And of course, that's the one we all identify with, right? Of course, my mother is a jerk. My boss fired me. Yeah, there's a reason for my suffering. This guy cut me off in the road. The grocery store overcharged me. My mother beat me when I was a child. My father raped me when I was a child. See, it goes the whole gamut. But it's always someone else doing it to us, right? That's where we go in our heads. And that's not what the Buddha was saying when he said there's a cause to our suffering. These horrible things, whether being cut off on the highway or something horrible happened to you or your child, happened. But the suffering that you feel is coming from inside. Those of you that remember the horror movies of the 80s, The Call is coming from inside the house. I think that was from, yeah, I Know What You Did Last Summer, or one of those movies, Scream or something. The call is coming from inside the house. That's big. And we don't understand that until the fourth noble truth. But right here is the first time we're hearing it, that there is a cause to the suffering. If any of you have read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, he was a concentration camp survivor, and during the Holocaust. And when he was in the concentration camp, and he was there for a long time, he saw people die and he saw people live. And as a student of human nature, that interested him. Like, why are some people, you know, of the same health level, like these people that didn't have underlying conditions or whatever, why are some surviving and making it and some withering away and dying? And he came to the realization that it was our perspective, that it's how we understand what's happening around us and what we do with that understanding. And this is, I believe, what the Buddha is getting at here. This is about perspective. This person did something and I am now choosing to react in anger. That's my perspective of it. There's also other ways maybe that you could shift your perspective and not suffer so much. Our teacher Tai Kosen often says, someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like, may you be well, may you be healthy, happy, may you get a ticket later. No, but we can do this. I had a therapist one time who handed me a crystal and said there are many facets of the crystal. So there are many different ways of looking at the same event. So the cause of suffering is coming from inside. And what the Buddha had done to realize that was during his meditations, he was starting to feel that gap between an event happening and his reacting. And he was feeling that, what if I stood back and looked at it a little bit differently? Would that change the way I feel? And I do have a poem for that. I just remembered. I love this poem. I hope you guys don't mind me reading out of this book. And actually, I'm kind of hoping, if anybody's interested, to have a study group with this book. I love it so much that, and men, women, any gender. And I was wondering if there is any interest. I'd love to have a study group with this book. So this is from the nun Abaya. And she says, this body you carry around is like a small child always wanting something. Over the years, body and mind have gotten a little tangled up, haven't they? When one is hungry, the other eats. When one is sad, the other cries. Look closely. Is there a narrow valley where one ends and the other begins? I just love that poem, because that shows the connection between the body and the mind, between what happens in our reaction. And is there a valley in between there that we can pause for a second and maybe make another choice that will lessen our suffering? So the second noble truth is that there is a reason you're suffering. There's a beginning to it. There's something that caused it. It might be you, but we're not there yet. The third noble truth. So he sat some more, and more enlightenment came. And Thich Nhat Hanh very poetically describes this as it was a thunderbolt. It wasn't God standing on a mountain giving him directions. It was a thunderbolt that just cracked him open, and he had this realization. So the third noble truth is the one we all love. It's like, there is an end to suffering. So this horrible feeling I'm having, there is an end to it. Thank goodness we got to the third one. I had a friend who was a wonderful teacher to me, and I was in the middle. I sometimes experience anxieties, and I am learning through this work and this path to find that narrow crack and to just take a breath and address things differently. But I had let some things get away from me, and I was in a full-blown panic attack, which I haven't done in years. And I called a friend of mine who I know has panic attacks, and I'm crying and I can't breathe. I feel like I'm going to die. What do I do? I'm definitely suffering right here. And my friend said she was told by a doctor that the body can't sustain that level of anxiety for more than an hour. The body will just simply get tired and stop. So she said, start watching the clock, because there will be an end. And just her telling me that this will end, and the reason she told me was because someone had told her and it worked for her, was so relieving. Oh, this will end. I'm just going to start the timer. So that's where the third noble truth is. There is an end to this. It won't go forever. Nothing does. Everything arises and everything passes away. So there is an end to this. That's the third noble truth. So if you are currently experiencing pain and suffering, dissatisfaction, anger, grief, there is a cause to it. There's a beginning to it, something that's causing that, and there is an end. So then we get to the fourth noble truth. And this is the big one. This is like, yeah, you're telling me it's going to end. How? I mean, who's going to fix this? Guess who's going to fix it? Ha ha! This is why everybody hates Buddhist advice. You. there's no magic pill. Darn it. There's no magic person. None of the teachers and monks here in this room will just boink you on the head with a magic wand and suddenly everything's puppies and sparkles. It's you. You're what's going to end your own suffering. But there's a deal. There's a path. So if you've made it this far in the video, download this free PDF, which will show you, give me your email address. And that's, I don't know if any of you do online workshops. I do. And that's kind of the pattern. It's like, and here's this downloadable PDF, and here's the steps you take. And I'm not going to go into detail into these steps because that is the next class, which will be taught by, no, that's not the next class because Scott's teaching the next class. Yes, it is. The Eightfold Path is Scott, who's teaching next weekend. And he will go into great detail about what these things are, the last noble truth. So the last noble truth is, boom, here's the recipe and here's what you just have to do. And this will relieve your suffering. Your suffering will end. It will come back and you keep practicing these things. So I'm just going to read them and just define them a little bit. So the first one is considered right view or understanding. And some people have problems with the translation of right and thinking, especially when we think, well, if it's right view, what is wrong view? And yeah, that people sometimes talk about wrong view. It can feel a little dogmatic to some folks. And if it bothers you, you can use the word wise, that it is a wise view, but it's an understanding of where you are right now and where other people are right now. And rather than taking more of a victim mode, it's more of like understanding what's happening to you and more of this, finding that gap, right? And Scott will talk more about all of these. And then the second is right thought, wise thinking. The third is right speech, which is the one we referred to today. Tycho's or Venerable Miles talked about today, and it is a doozy. It's the one I always seem to be working on. I took a month to work on each one of these ones, and I don't think I got past right speech. I'm still there, and that was 3 years ago. So right speech is a biggie. It can solve a lot of problems and resolve a lot of suffering by practicing right speech. There's right action, what we do in our lives. Right livelihood, your job. I once heard a lawyer ask a teacher, I'm a lawyer and I have to lie on a regular basis as part of my job. Is that okay? Is that right livelihood? Because it's kind of required. And the teacher said, no, it's not okay. You're lying. I mean, there's going to be some consequences to that. And if that's okay with you, keep going. But that's not really considered, if you're lying or killing or stealing, that's not really considered right livelihood. That was kind of eye-opening, that viewpoint was for me. There's right effort is 6. 7 is right mindfulness. I love that one. And 8 is right concentration or samadhi. And that's our meditation practice, working this Four Noble Truths. And the Buddha said, honestly, and we've heard it here in Sangha too, he wasn't called the Buddha until he realized these things. And according to Thich Nhat Hanh, it was the children who named him the Buddha, the enlightened one. They wanted to call him that now. He was no longer teacher Siddhartha or teacher Shakyamuni, they were calling him. He was now the Buddha. And they could tell, as Sujata said, his eyes, there was something in his eyes. He was different. And he realized these amazing truths. And he had a game plan for easing any suffering we may have. We can practice these things and watch it go away. And you've heard it before probably that people say, That's really all Buddhism is. If you know the Four Noble Truths and you're practicing the Eightfold Path, you kind of got it. The rest just rounds it out. It makes it colorful, and then you learn more about the people who practiced it. But that's really what it is. That's the path. And it's the middle way, where the Buddha, we all know that he was a prince, and he was very involved with the world of phenomena, and he was not happy there. He still saw suffering. He still saw sickness and old age and death. It wasn't helping. So he went to the caves, denied himself, removed himself from the world of phenomena, and he almost died. So this is the middle way. This is how we can work with ourselves, stay in control of ourselves, be there for the benefit of other people, not harm ourselves or anyone else, and relieve our own suffering without causing more suffering to anyone else. So this is the middle way. And I have a saying for that, of course. I'm really into this. This is from Genta, a nun named Genta. And she says, I was forever getting lost until one day the Buddha told me, to walk this path, you will need 7 friends: mindfulness, curiosity, courage, joy, calm, stillness, and perspective. For many years, these friends and I have traveled together, sometimes wandering in circles, sometimes taking the long way around. There were days when I thought I couldn't go on. There were days when I thought I was finally beaten. It's scary to give all of yourself to just one thing. What if you don't make it? Oh, my heart, you don't have to go it alone. Train yourself to train just a little more gently. And I love that. That is something I think we as Americans need to hear. Train ourselves to train just a little more gently. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't hate yourself or anyone else. There is a way out of that kind of pain and suffering, and it is suffering. It's not starving children in Africa, but it's your suffering, and it's valid because it's there. There's a cause to it, and there's also an end to it, and that's the Eightfold Path. So I hope this helped you, my friends. Next week, we're going to learn about the Eightfold Path so that we'll be able to work this magic and help ease our suffering and the suffering of others. And I am open for questions or any comments, and so probably are the teachers in the room. Thank you very much. Gretchen!
Not a question. I just wanted to say thank you very much. The way you explain things always resonates with me. How do I say this? You talk about it at a level that I can understand and doesn't leave me wandering. Thank you.
You are so welcome, Gretchen. You are so welcome. I really feel that the Four Noble Truths are also a recipe for, well, I think that's obvious, for mental health wellness. I think it's great. I'm always an advocate for mental health practices and wellness. And for those of us that struggle with that, this is a nice alternative or addition to our therapies and our medications. You know, medication and meditation, they go well together. And so this is a nice thing. The Eightfold Path, I think, is something that can really help ease our mental angst. Someone wanted me to repeat someone. Could you say that here in the group? You want me to repeat something?
Hello, Bob. Thank you so much for this beautiful talk. Could you say that piece about the middle way again?
The poem?
You did this, you said the middle way, and then this beautiful explanation of it.
So the middle way that the Buddha talked about was that there were 2 ends of the spectrum of his life that he lived. He lived as a prince who had every need met. He had, there were dancing girls and elephants and everything. It was very extravagant. He married a beautiful woman who shared his views about the world, that this was nice, jewels and everything. I mean, but he would give these things away. They weren't fulfilling to him. So it was this life of luxury and indulgence and every need met, very involved in the world of phenomena. So everything around me, I am totally involved there. I'm in it. And yet he would walk away from it. He would leave the parties. He and his wife would go down into the village and work with the sick children because he couldn't resolve this life of luxury. And yet these children are dying because they don't have any food, or they have a plague of some sort. And he couldn't resolve that. So all he knew was to leave. He left everything. He cut his hair, he put on a robe, and he left according to the stories, during a party in the middle of the night. He just walked out. And a lot of the women in this book also did the same. They were facing a marriage or a brokerage of some sort, and they just cut their hair and left. So that's very interesting. But so he went to the caves, to the mountains, because that's what monks did. You go and be an ascetic, and you don't eat and you don't drink and you don't have adequate clothing. You are out in the weather. You're denying everything. You're denying the body. You're denying any sort of comfort. So it's the very opposite. And he almost died. So that's removing yourself from the world of phenomena. So he tried immersing himself in the world of phenomena and then removing himself from the world, and he almost died. That's definitely the opposite of not suffering. I mean, he suffered, and it's interesting that it was a woman, a young woman who saved his life. So without her, we wouldn't have the Buddha. So when he comes to the forest to recover, and he meets the children, and he starts having these revelations, and he starts talking to them, and they're responding. So they're his first Sangha, and he's realizing that it's starting to work. The suffering is lessening. So that's the middle way. So if we can it's the gentler way, training yourself to train just a little more gently. You don't have to be so harsh and deny yourself everything and live in a cave in the woods. And you don't have to have all your needs met. If I just got that raise at work, if I just won the lottery, that's not going to make you, I mean, you can read stories of people who won the lottery. Their suffering did not end. And many of them had worse suffering. It's the middle way. Can we live just as we are, where we are, with what we've got, and find happiness? Does that help?
Yes, thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It was a very good talk, Minbao. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The thing that I like to remind people is that we have in our society, we have people who have everything that we think we would want to make ourselves happy, and yet they end up like Robin Williams or Elvis Presley, or wind up in the Betty Ford Clinic. You know, the Betty Ford Clinic is for all those people, beautiful people who have everything and are still suffering, right? And that's the part that we seem to forget, is that even if every wish you had was fulfilled, unless you understand what causes your suffering, it won't satisfy you. You'll never be satisfied. One of my favorite Zen teachers is Mick Jagger, and he said, "I can't get no satisfaction."
That is excellent. I love that.
Well done, well done, well done.
I have one last poem to send you off with, and then we'll hear any announcements from Taikoza or anything. And I want to dedicate this to Gretchen. For some reason, this reminds me of you, Gretchen. This is from Vijaya, a nun named Vijaya, and she says, "When everyone else was meditating, I'd be outside circling the hall. Finally, I went to confess. 'I'm hopeless,' I said. The elder nun smiled. 'Just keep going,' she said. 'Nothing stays in orbit forever. If this circling is all you have, why not make the circling your home?' I did as she told me and went on circling the hall. If you find yourself partly in and partly out, if you find yourself drawn to this path and also drawing away, I can assure you, you are in good company. Just keep going. Sometimes the most direct path isn't a straight line. So just keep going. Just work with what you have. Just work with what you have. If circling is all you have, if the cushion is just, if you just circle around the cushion and you never sit, then be there. Be there for now and see what happens next. And if anyone's interested in these poems, and if you like poetry discussion groups or whatever, I'm thinking about having one once in a while. You wouldn't have to buy the book. I mean, we could just talk at one poem at a time, and all genders welcome. So just get hold of me. Let me know if anybody's interested. I love these, and I'd love to talk to someone about them. And if there's nothing else, I'll hand it over to Tychosen.
How do we get hold of you? We don't have your email.
Carrier pigeon. Just get a pigeon, tie a little thing, and I'm out here in the woods. I'll post my email. Scott, do you have my email? Can you do the cdkingery@gmail.com?
Sure, yeah. I got that here somewhere.
I'm on my iPad, so it's not very conducive to that. Yeah, email's probably best. If you have my phone number, always text, because I don't pick it up often. I work long hours and I don't usually answer the phone, but I can discreetly text and email.
On that subject, I wanted to add that if any of you want to contact any of the teachers, just go to our website and it says contact, and there's a tab. All of the teachers and reverends, including Sister Minbow, are listed there with their email. So at any time, you are welcome to contact us.
Thank you. I don't know what we'd do without Reverend Valerie, really. Reverend Valerie and Reverend Scott behind the scenes make so much happen, you have no idea. Also, I'd like to say that on our website, there is a way that you can donate to the temple. So all of these teachings are free, temple service is free, but if Donna is a way of giving merit, of showing your appreciation for this, and also the temple really relies on donations, and we want to get that new temple built with the heated floor so my bum can sit on a warm floor. I can't even imagine that. Oh my God, I might just take naps on that floor. So definitely, if you feel so inclined to give a few bucks, there is a way to give Donna on the website. Thank you all for joining me today. This was really fun. Thank you so much.